Youthforia just extended their foundation shade range, and we need to talk about it. By the way, I'm KJ Miller. I'm a founder, lecturer, and content creator. I love talking all things business and pop culture, so if you like those things, be sure to subscribe. Before we dive in, just so you know my credentials to talk about this at all, I did found a little brand called Minted Cosmetics 7 years ago, and I know a lot about product development because in that time I developed almost 100 different SKUs of products across 10 or 12 different color cosmetics categories. So I know a lot about product development. I will say my brand has been on a bit of a hiatus. We are relaunching summer 2024. So if you feel like am I really going to listen to someone whose brand has been on hiatus, that's fine. You clocked me, but it doesn't change the fact that I've learned a lot, and I do have some thoughts on what's going on with Youthforia. So let's dig in. Now, in case you're not even sure what we're doing here and why we're talking about this, let me catch you up. Very recently, Youthforia extended their foundation shade range and included this shade, their darkest shade, and people have had a chance to try it and they are not happy because it's giving jet black. It is not giving skin tone at all. But before we dive into that, we actually need to rewind because the reason this is even worse than it sounds is because back in August when they first launched this foundation, it had 15 shades, which in my opinion, that is not a bad number of shades. However, very few of those shades were meant for brown skin tones. I had trouble finding a picture of the original 15 shades, but here is one picture from when they first launched. And as you can see, the brown shades, there just aren't that many. So they were originally called out for that, not having enough brown shades. And at the time, their founder came out and said, we were always planning to extend the range. We basically wanted to do a proof of concept with this limited shade range. And then once we know if people like the foundation, we want to expand it. Now, people were not happy with that answer either. I did a TikTok at the time. If I can scroll back and find it, I'll post it here. I did a TikTok at the time saying, I don't think that there's anything wrong with launching only 15 shades. I don't think there's anything wrong with being unable to launch a foundation line with 50 shades or whatever we all believe is the right number at this point. Maybe we think 30 is a good middle ground. The fact is, when you're a small brand, that is just extremely unrealistic because of minimum order quantities. Most places are going to require you to order 5,000 units of each shade, even though you know and I know and the world knows and the market knows those shades are not going to sell equally. You still have to order at least 5,000 of them. And that's a high burden to place on a brand, particularly an indie brand, which is why most indie brands, Minted included, don't have 50 shades of foundation. We had 16. Now, we have far more shades that work for brown skin tones. In fact, I think if you were going to shade us for anything, you'd shade us in the other direction for not having enough foundation shades for paler skin tones. But, we have a lot for the browns. That said, people didn't love the messaging there. So that brings us to now. When they released this shade extension, there was already going to be a lot of eyeballs and a lot of pressure. And I do feel for the founder on that because I think no matter what, I don't know that this was going to go extremely well because it was a high pressure situation. However, it went about as bad as it could go because this shade, let's just take a look. If you follow Golloria on TikTok, she's one of my favorite makeup creators. She has beautiful, luscious, deep, rich, dark skin. And she has been calling out brands in the industry more broadly for years now on not being inclusive enough. Now, she made a video right here. I suggest you go watch it. I'll link it below as well, where she tries this shade and she puts the shade on one cheek and black face paint on the other, and they are virtually identical. Then another creator whose videos I always find to be extremely entertaining, he posted saying he went to the ingredients and found that the only colorant listed was black. And that, friends, is wild. It's wild to only have one colorant for any makeup shade because makeup products should be more nuanced than that. I've literally never heard of that, but for that one shade to be black is just downright bananas, okay? There has been a lot of just hoopla online about this whole thing. What I wanted to do was sort of give my perspective as someone who has developed a number of products of what I think happened here and how I would have gone about this differently. So, first of all, when developing a product shade range extension, in my experience, and also based on conversations I've had with a lot of founders in the industry, there are usually three different ways a brand can go about this. And a lot of times you might actually use some combo of all three to kind of triangulate the shades that you want to launch. So the first method, and I would say this is the most common method, is benchmarking. This is when you bring in existing shades, typically from another brand, that you want to benchmark your shades off of. The reason this method is so common is because this is the method that a lot of chemists and labs prefer. It's much easier to work with something that already exists and then tweak than it is to just completely create something from scratch. So a lot of times they're going to ask you, even if you weren't planning on providing a benchmark, do you have a benchmark? Because it's easier, right? So that's method number one. And believe me, everybody does this, not just smaller brands, bigger brands, conglomerates, they all do it. Typically what you're not going to do is just bring in a benchmark and say, make this exactly how it is. But a lot of times you will bring in a benchmark and say, I kind of want to start here, and then I want to up the red, or I actually don't like how red this undertone is, or, I'm thinking because my formula has SPF, I'm probably going to need to increase the pigment load, whatever, what have you. But it's helpful to have a benchmark. Okay, so that's method number one. And like I said, that is a very commonly used method. And the fact is, now that there are so many brands that have so many shades, Fenty obviously being the one that comes to mind for a lot of people, you got a lot of options to choose from if you want to go the benchmarking method, okay? Method number two, and this is kind of another form of benchmarking, but method number two is to bring in a Pantone that you want the lab to recreate to in that product, right? So an actual Pantone, whether it be a brown one, a beige one, whatever, what have you. I personally never used this method. I think I tried once, maybe for a lip color, maybe for a blush color. I tried kind of giving a Pantone and tweaking from that. But to me, it just always came out so flat that the amount of tweaking I'd have to do if I started with a Pantone, I just didn't want to do. I've never found that method to be that successful for me, particularly because my core demographic, my core customer is brown skinned women. There's not a Pantone in the world that you can just throw onto a brown skinned woman's face and have it look good. The colors have to be much more nuanced than that. So while that's not a method that I've used, I do know that it is a method that is used in the industry to start there and again, tweak from there. Now, the third method, when you are either creating or extending a shade range, is literally to start from scratch, to go to your chemist, to go to the lab and say, okay, this brown where I am now I actually want to create 4 shades beyond that, 4 shades deeper, and just start from scratch. Don't hand them anything, no Pantones, no other shades. Just say, I want 4 deeper shades. This method to me is the trickiest, and you can only use this method if you have a lot of faith in your chemist and in their methods for creating shades that make sense for your customer. There are chemists who are very, very skilled at this. Chemists who are very good at shade matching, chemists who have access to a lot of different people of different skin tones to bring them into the lab and to really work off of a skin first centric solution. Those chemists exist. Is that what you've got in every lab all over the world? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Believe me, I have toured a lot of labs. I've worked with a lot of labs. Most of the labs that I have seen don't even have a person of color anywhere nearby, okay? Not in the actual laboratory, not in the fulfillment center, not in admin. And I'm telling you, I've toured a lot of these facilities, okay? So for their ability to say, oh, I'm just gonna make 10 more brown shades or 4 more brown shades just based on, my mind and my heart and my beliefs. No, you would not trust that. You would not trust that, because even if they were able to create just 4 more browns, it wouldn't be based off of real life. It just wouldn't be, because they wouldn't have access to that. At most, they'd be looking at brown people on their computer screen and trying to base it off that. But we all know color doesn't read as nuanced when it's on a screen or on a piece of paper. So that method to me should be reserved for when you are working with the chemist who you blindly trust to be able to do that sort of work. Unfortunately, to me, it would seem as though that is the method that the Youthforia team used, because I know they did not give them a benchmark for this latest shade, because there are no other shades on the market that are this black. Absolutely not. There just aren't, because it doesn't make sense, because people's skin isn't this color. So they definitely did not give them a competitor benchmark. In terms of Pantone, they may have done that, but usually if you're going to give a Pantone, it's not going to be for foundation. It's going to be for, a lip product or a cheek product, maybe even an eye product. It's very uncommon for someone to use a Pantone for a foundation shade, because, your skin is nuanced and complex and has undertones. I have not seen it done. So I would be very confused if they went with method 2, which leaves me to method 3. And the further evidence to this being the scenario we're in is that the founder actually said, after she received the sample from the lab of this shade, she actually went out and about trying to find someone for whom the shade would work. And that's how they got to, this shade model. Folks, that's backward. You're supposed to develop the shades based on people who exist, not develop the shades and then see if they'll work on various people. That's why I think maybe we ended up in bucket number 3. Now, this is what I would have done differently. Let's say that this particular founder, or any founder, really wants to use method 3. You want to create fully custom shades. You don't want any benchmarks. You don't want to give any Pantones. You really want it to be fully 100% custom. I totally respect that, but it's still got to be based on real life. So if I were going to do that, then I would go out, I would seek out either my customer base or my social media followers or my influencers that I worked with. I would seek out the people who currently can't wear my foundation because they're deeper. I would seek them out. I would ask them, one, what foundations and in what shades are you currently wearing? So that I could at least provide that, not as a benchmark. I wouldn't say, hey, start here, but so I could provide it in the information that I'm going to give to my chemist to allow them to start to triangulate. So I would provide them, one, the names of the shades that the people who I'm trying to map to already wear. 2, the pictures of those people, right? So now they've got pictures of the people, they've got the foundation shades that they already wear, and 3, undertone guidance. I would make it clear to the chemist, I'm really looking for, within these 4 shades that need to work for these 4 faces, I'm looking for these middle 2 to have kind of a warmer undertone and these outside 2 to have a cooler or neutral undertone, whatever it might be. That's the guidance that I would hand over to the chemist before she started mixing it up and whipping it up in the lab. So at least she has a starting point. Again, I'm not giving her a full-on benchmark. I'm not saying, here is Fenty 530, make that. I'm saying, these are the 3 shades this person told me she wears in these 3 different brands. This is her picture. This is the undertone I want. With all of that information, I want you to present to me your interpretation of what the perfect color for her would be. That's how I would do it, because at the end of the day, it is my experience that there just aren't that many chemists in the world, again, who you can just say, go to town, just make it. There aren't, they need guidance. And I think what happened here was there was a lack of guidance to the chemist, to the lab, and that resulted in what we saw today. And look, brands make mistakes. I've certainly made plenty. So I'm not in any way trying to pile on. I'm simply trying to share a little bit of the behind the scenes of how product development typically works and what I would do differently in this scenario. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. I hope it was enjoyable. If you like content like this, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.